May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength, our Redeemer.
Amen.
Amen. Now, as I prepare a few things here, if there's anybody that wants to come up a little bit closer to see better what I'll be doing, now's the time to start moving. One of the interesting things about the lesson that we just heard is that I'll bet each one of you may be thinking of something that it reminds you of in Scripture. Something other than that particular story itself. And it kind of brings to my own mind the fact that there are resonances in our lives that reverberate in a lot of different ways. If you know anything about music and anything about, different instruments, there are some instruments like a gong that if you strike it, that sound just keeps going out. And sometimes it sets something else in the room vibrating. There's a resonance that touches it. I think even more often that we might understand that to happen is in our very own church when we're in the nave. And Terry has all the stops pulled out and he's playing the lowest of the low notes, and you feel the floor begin to vibrate. And there are other things, of course, within that whole space that will vibrate. And so as I think of this story, particularly that we've heard this morning, the story of the feeding of the 5,000, there are parts and bits and pieces that remind us of other stories in Scripture that we've heard. And they intertwine. And one gives more meaning to what you're hearing now, and it even goes into the future, even into the things that we do on a weekly basis as we worship here. And so I'm going to be using these elements of godly play to help bring together some of those resonances, some of those things that tend to touch different parts of our scripture readings and different parts of our lives as we go forward. And so I'll begin. Once there was a man who said wonderful things and taught wonderful things to the people. And he did the most amazing things while he was around. And the people said to him, "Tell us who you are." And in one of the readings that we hear from John's Gospel, he tells us, "I am the Good Shepherd." I am the Good Shepherd, and I know my sheep. Each one of them I call by name. They follow me when I call because they know my voice. I take them to green pastures where they can be nourished and find something good to eat. And even though we might remember that we've heard this story in the Gospels, many of us will also remember the words of Psalm 23 that resonate very clearly with this story. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green pastures and leads me beside still waters. He revives my soul and guides me along right pathways for his name's sake. From thinking about the Good Shepherd with pastures and good water to drink, we come to what is the table of the Good Shepherd, the table that he sets. You spread a banquet before me in the presence of those who trouble me. You have anointed my head with oil, and my cup is running over. The story reverberates even further as people take their places around the table of the Good Shepherd. People from every tribe and nation, people young and old, all are invited to the table of the Good Shepherd. Even the youngest of our children are invited to take their places too. And while the stories that we have heard so far reverberating around this have come from the past into the Gospels, the story reverberates further into Revelation, where we find that at the end of time, people from every nation and every tribe and all the people will be invited to this table of the Good Shepherd. But until that happens, there are others who will preside at that table and work on behalf of the Good Shepherd to bring the blessing of this whole situation. And even from John's Gospel, we hear there will be one flock and one shepherd. And so they can gather all at the same table. To partake of the bread and the cup of blessing. And so I wonder what this all means to you. I wonder what this represents to you. I wonder how many different tables you can think of where shepherds of one sort or another have gathered you in and made you welcome. There's a very eloquent poet that I enjoy her work, and she's also an artist. And what she likes to do is, for many of the scriptures, and especially a story like this, she will write a poem and she'll also paint a picture. And I'd like to share now the poem that she wrote about this and invite you to do what she recommends in this poem. It's called Blessing the Fragments. Cup your hands together, and you will see a shape that this blessing wants to take. A basket, bowl, vessel. It cannot help but hold itself open to welcome what comes. This blessing knows the secret of the fragments that find their way into its keeping. The wholeness that may hide in what has been left behind. The persistence of plenty where there seemed only lack. Look into the hollows of your hands and ask, what wants to be gathered there? What abundance waits among the scraps that come to you? What feast will offer itself from the fragments that remain? One of the resonances that often happens for me as I hear or tell a story is through music. And I was remembering last night a verse of a hymn that I learned maybe 40 years ago, and I'd like to share that with you. We hold a treasure not made of gold, in earthen vessels wealth untold. One treasure only, the Lord, the Christ.